huge difference in our ability to stay resilient, stay centered, stay grounded in the midst of the stress that we all experience. These are just a couple of ideas of things that you can do today to feel more grounded, happier, and more able to resist the stress in the workplace. So what we've talked about today is why happiness matters, what is happiness after all, purpose, hope, and friendships, what you can do to be happier in your workplace, and then how to cope with the inevitable pressures and stresses that you all experience just as I do. With that, I would love to hear some of your wonderful questions. Kurt's going to help me here. Let me turn to you, Kurt, and see what we've got.
We do have a whole bunch of questions and some really nice comments. Bashalia says, I absolutely agree with your definition of happiness. It's true that we feel so much better when we're generous and kind. Lorna said that just this morning her boss came up to her and her coworker and said, we're lucky to have each other. Some people said that they've read your book, How to Be Happy at Work, and they really enjoyed it. But let's get to some questions.
Great.
You said that happiness is a choice, but Suno wonders, is happiness at work a necessity for focusing on our work more effectively?
That's such a great question. Is happiness at work a necessity? Yes, it is. And there's brain science behind that. Happiness at work matters because of this. Our emotions, how we feel, dramatically impact how and what we think, how we process information. And the combination of our emotions and our cognition obviously impact our actions. We've learned in the management sciences and in psychology, positive psychology in particular, and also now increasingly in neuroscience, that the interplay between emotions, cognitions, and behavior is vastly important. It's huge when it comes to determining whether we're going to be effective in our jobs or not. So if you care about effectiveness, if you care about success, pay attention to how you feel. Kurt, any more questions over there?
Yes, let me ask one from Charlotte in Denmark. She wonders who's responsible to find the purpose and happiness between a worker and the manager. How do you work that out?
Wow, another great question. I think Charlotte in Denmark, and I'm going to be in Copenhagen in a couple of weeks. Maybe we'll see you there. It'll be really exciting. So who's responsible for finding purpose? Ultimately, it's each one of us. Ultimately, it is only us who can determine what values do we want to live in the workplace and how are we going to do this? How can we have an impact on things that we care about, projects, goals, outcomes, etc. That said, and this is why your question is so good, Charlotta, managers have a special role in creating an environment where purpose is at the heart and center of what we do. I would go so far as to say that is one of a manager's or a leader's primary jobs, to make sure that people understand the link between their values and what they're doing right now today, between what they're doing and impact, outcomes, results. Managers are the translators that allow us to understand why our work matters. So while it's really important for us to take the reins and take responsibility, for those of you who are managers, recognize that it is a central purpose of your work life to create a resonant microculture around you where purpose, individual purpose, is clear to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so our next question is about negativity in the workplace. Maria, for one, wonders what you do about bullying at work, and Syed asks, what about toxic remarks from colleagues and that potential to make you unhappy at work?
So bullies in the workplace and toxic colleagues, or worse yet, toxic managers. I worked for someone who was like that a number of years ago, and I know personally what that does to us. In my case, I found myself actually less effective. I was concerned about it all the time. It's all I thought about. This man was frightening. He was actually scary. And I know some of you have had that experience. And if it's a manager, it's even worse than if it's colleagues, because they have power over us. This is a real problem in many of our workplaces. So what do we do about it? you've got to build some emotional boundaries. You've got to protect yourselves. You cannot let these people kill you. You cannot let them steal your self-esteem. You cannot let them impact your identity or your sense of self. It is not okay to give away your power. We've got to understand that, in fact, these folks are dangerous. They kill people in the workplace. And by the way, you can even get sick. So I always say, my mantra is you've got to run towards something rather than running away. But if you are in a situation where you've constantly got to deal with toxic comments from people backstabbing, knifing you in the back, or trying to undermine you, or if you've got a manager who is truly toxic, you may want to think about your alternatives. Is there a way to go to someone to get help in your organization? Is there a good, strong, resonant HR organization? Do you have a mentor that you can go talk to for strategies for how to deal with this person in your culture? Do you maybe need to think about moving on? It's a last resort. I wouldn't say it's the first option, but sometimes it's important. You want to be effective and successful in your working lives and your careers. I do, you do, we all do. And when we hit a wall and we've used up all our resources and we still have a serious problem in the workplace, that's when we have to think about potentially some other options. That was a great couple of questions there. Thank you.
The bullying really struck a chord. Lots of comments about that. We have a question from Fahad asking about just organizational culture. He says that there's a sense of survival competition in the workplace. That you're always taught that you're supposed to stay ahead of everyone. So how do you try to be happy in an environment like that when it's really about collective growth rather than individual growth?
Yeah. Hyper competition, Fahad, is really destructive in the workplace. And I have seen and coached and know managers and leaders who think it is their job to pit one individual against another, to get teams fighting over resources or special projects. And every single time I've seen it, it's been destructive. Every single time. This is a mistaken notion that came out of the last century. I don't believe it worked then either, this hyper competition that we see, kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. There are all these metaphors. They're horrible. And what we know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that our workplaces are increasingly requiring us all to be collaborative, to be team players, to be ready to jump in and help rather than ready to jump in and harm. So what do you do if you're in an organization like that? Here's an idea. It's probably unlikely that you can change your entire organizational culture, but you can always shine a light around you onto the people who depend on you, whether they report to you or you just work with them, and work together to create a resonant microculture around you. It's like a lamppost. Think about the light that a lamppost throws. Make sure that as many people get into that light as possible. Focus on purpose, focus on hope, focus on friendship. Set up norms, rules of the road that don't allow people to harm each other. That you will not do that to one another. Wouldn't it be interesting if enough of us did that? Our organizational cultures would change from the bottom up.
There are a bunch of questions about leaving work, something that you hinted at as well. But a really interesting question here from Lizeth asking, my question is, if you're really good at something but you're not happy, what should you do?
If you're really good at something but you're not happy, if you're not happy, it doesn't matter how good you are at it. You're not happy. You may, I don't know if this is true for you, Lizette, but you may, if you find yourself in that situation, be trapped by some shoulds. I should stay because I'm good at this. I should stay because my friends think I've got a great job. Or I should stay because I invested in my education and I need to just keep going. Well, you might want to rethink that if that's the case. Is there a possible way to do some of what you are good at in a different environment that would make you happier? Or maybe is it time to learn some new skills? Is it time to think about work differently? Is it time to take the leap, and this is a leap of faith, into a different kind of work where you maybe have to start over a little bit, making yourself vulnerable to think about what it is that you would love to be